Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Proper Baron and this is Insanity. Today we have Dev Diary number 120 called Systemic Refinements, which is a really underwhelming title and it is essentially a novel. If you thought that last week's Dev Diary was long, if you thought that there was a really long video about this made by some guy called One Proud Bavarian, then yes, but it's nothing compared to this week. We're going to walk our way through everything in here, we're going to study it, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to see whether it looks like something that is good or something that is bad. Spoilers, most of these changes are absolutely magnificent in theory. What they're going to look like in practice, of course, is something else, but fundamentally here, this is the big mechanical underwork, the sort of framework built for everything going on in the DLC. All this stuff right here, as I understand it, will be in the free patch because these are mechanical changes, so that is great as well. Now, that being said, I understand that if you don't have the time, the food, or the drinks to actually sit down and listen to this video or read the Dev Diary yourself, just know that around next week, after the next Dev Diary is out, I will cover everything that is in the DLC and in the patch that we know of so far, and actually talk about this in a summarized, edited video, so that you don't have to do, well, all of the work of actually reading or listening to all of this. No matter, today we're going to do this at a greater length and hopefully understand everything going on here, and trust me, it is a lot. Let's just jump into this because, again, this will take enough time as is. Make sure to get some food, to get some drink, or you will definitely not survive this. In this diary, we will delve into Vassal Stances, minute-arm stationing, domain limit rebalancing, the building slot revamp, rebalanced and new buildings, the improved personality tooltip, rich presence, destroying artifacts / Aniconism, and improvements to the current situation. Yeah, it's a lot. And we're gonna jump first into Vassal Stances, which is a big change. I have seen a comparison made here with the whole issue that we had in Conclave and CK2. Conclave and CK2, if you didn't play it, there were certain stances that your counselor could have. They could be loyalists, they could dislike you, they could be religiously motivated, they could be pragmatic, they could be glory hounds, basically. I disagree with that being the same thing because the dynamic and the actual usage case is totally different, although, of course, here are actual new personalities assigned to your vassals, which I think is a huge benefit. So, let's just take a look at what it is in CK3. Every vassal has a stance that affects what they like or dislike, so not just every counselor, and the stance they choose is dependent on their personality and a few outside factors like cultural ethos or innovations. Obviously, if you, for example, have, you know, a culture that is very, I don't know, let's say warfare-minded, they might be more likely to be glory hounds. I think that makes perfect sense. Depending on the constellation of stances in your realm, you might have to consider what to do or not do much more seriously than before. What we have right here, and let me just tell you what I think these are. I mean, we have exactly what, you know, exists down here, but this right here, we have Ratislav II of Bohemia as a minority vassal because he is Bohemian, whereas, of course, the liege is German. Then we have Duke Otto II. This is a glory hound vassal. This is also a glory hound vassal right here. These are basically these vassal types. Overall, we can see vassal stances. We have 13 courtly vassals. We have 5 glory hounds, 8 parochial vassals, 14 religious vassals, 14 minority vassals, which, man, that is a huge amount actually here, but it makes sense. The Holy Roman Empire was massive. There were many different cultures present, of course, including the French, the Swiss, the Dutch, and so on. And then 7 minor landholders, which I assume, or which, as I understand it, are basically just barons. The vassal stances are courtly, parochial, glory hound, zealot, minority, and minor landholder, as I just said. Note that they are not political groups, but rather a common outlook on things, a shared view on how a realm should be governed. For example, while all parochial vassals will gain an opinion boost whenever you build or upgrade a holding, and lose opinion every time that you declare a non-trivial war, when you attack someone that has 80+% of your military strength, it doesn't mean that they like each other any better, just that they like the same things in a liege. Honestly, this is really interesting. So, this is similar to CK2's Conclave Counselor stances in the sense that it makes characters act in a specific way that isn't necessarily limited to, for example, if you are incredibly tyrannic, everybody might dislike you, but people from different stances will perceive that differently, right? The way I see this is that this is sort of the framework, the groundwork for something that could be a more dynamic faction approach. Obviously, right now, all it does, well, everything it does, is it changes how you approach your realm, because if you have somebody that is unruly that you can't win over for yourself because, let's say, they just don't like you and you don't have the swayability to actually get it done, you might just take an action that they like. This is something that CK2 Conclave didn't do at all, and let's be really, a Conclave as great and amazing as it was without a doubt, largely worked through you getting favors, rather through you doing actions that these vassals then would enjoy. This change is very much dramatic, I would argue, because it means that we can now look at these not factions, but rather stakeholders, let's call them stakeholders maybe, and we can take specific actions to please a certain side of the realm, which also means that there's likely to be a certain part of the realm that won't be happy. This is an interesting shift, and I think a much more dramatic shift than the conclave stances, although, and I do want to stress this, conclave in itself in CK2, not that I talk too much about CK2 here, was a dramatic shift in how much the council was involved, which isn't the case in CK3. But these vassal stances themselves make the vassals much more specific. Constructing a temple, for example, will make it so that the parochials and zealots will like you when you upgrade or build it. You can see, Jesus Christ, where is this, I wonder? Because think about this. Every zealot vassal, there are 20 of them, gains 30 opinion of you for 10 years. I'm not sure about the balancing. I will say this, and this is very important. Many of the changes made here are made so that the late game balancing in particular becomes a bit better, right? So they're looking at a situation where people aren't constantly happy. What I'm missing here in this dev diary is the notion of dynasty legacies and dynasty splendor. Splendor is insane right now. The general opinion bonus that you get is absolutely ludicrous. And this right here is a massive bonus. This is for building a single temple, right? 20 people will get 30 opinion. Then the parochial vassals will also like it, but not as much as, of course, the zealot vassals, and they gain only 20 opinion. But you can see that these are now very particular actions that make more sense now. In the past, would you really consider building this? I believe building a temple gives you some piety, right? You can see it here as well, gives you some piety, but it never really bothered you all this much. Now it might be a power move that will actually cement the realm, which is how it worked, historically speaking. So, huge fan of the direction here for sure. The balancing, hey, it's all work in progress, right? Every stance also prefers one specific heir. This one is the favorite change when it comes to the vassal stances of mine. And if that heir succeeds you, they will get an opinion boost. But you'll also get an opinion penalty with every vassal who preferred someone else. So, I really like this, because while we do not yet have actual sort of immediate post-succession claimant factions, or rather claimant decisions as they would occur historically, you know, when we, for example, look at the Carolingians, of course, we are in a position here where it's very clear to sort of take a look at, okay, who is pleased with this, who is displeased. Whereas previously, I would only really consider who I personally would want as my vassal. I might look at this now and say, okay, wait a minute, Morvan Mapsulgendiren is actually liked by the Glory Hounds, the Zealots, and the minority vassals, assuming that, you know, for example, he will give more rights to the minority vassals, build some churches, and, I don't know, maybe go to war, host some tournaments, that sort of stuff. Brezelga, on the other hand, is liked by the courtly and parochial vassals. You know what I would love here, actually, is if it had, in brackets, the number of vassals in the realm. But anyway, this is a great evaluation now. We now have a decision here where it's like, okay, wait a minute, this faction, or these groups I should say, it's not factions, specifically prefer a particular player heir. I might go with that guy instead of the other guy. I like the newly added dynamic here for sure, because it gives you factions that will support you post-succession and factions that are more likely to oppose you. Stances prefer heirs based on a variety of reasons, but most often they either want a liege similar to them or one that they believe would serve their interests. They will naturally trend away from children and heirs of non-preferred genders unless they don't like any of the alternatives. Really interesting. I would love to see this surfaced even more. I would like to see exactly why you're deciding on this, that, and so on and so forth. But man, this is a really nice switch here for sure. It is possible to see what stance a character has directly in the character window. If it is your vassal, it'll show an icon next to their opinion. If the character is not your vassal, you can still see their stance by looking at the expanded personality tooltip. More on this later. So here we can see this is our vassal. We are, of course, Heinrich IV, and you can see that this guy is a zealot because he belongs to the church. Then right here, and this is so good. The personality summary that we have right here. First of all, we can hover over this, and we're going to get more information on this in a second, but we can hover over this, and it gives us information about the actual personality. I have been using a mod for this, and that mod isn't nearly as good as what they're doing here, trust me. I love that mod to pieces, amazing mod, but they went further, and I'm so thankful that they did. Then we also now have it actually surfaced what the economical decision-making AI is. He is unpredictable. He might save up money because he's worried that he gets invaded or such, or he might not save up money. He might put himself into a position where he starts building radically, where he starts gearing up his men-at-arms, and so on. I like that we can now actually take a look at this. The more we expose this sort of AI logic, the more the player understands that logic, the more will we actually be in control of our own roleplay. Until now I have to say, oh, I guess, like, the immersive choice here, this guy is interested in the faith and he likes looking at that, and now I can look at it and I go, oh, wait a minute, this guy is interested in the faith. It is depicted because he is a zealot. We can now fully understand this. We can see, oh yeah, this guy is dishonorable, I can't trust him, I'm not gonna attend his feast. These sort of things previously happened exclusively in your head. Now, they are actually not just happening in-game, they are also being communicated. The vassal stance change and the actual sort of information surfacing of the personality of a character, really good stuff. Even if it is unbalanced, which quite frankly, I'm pretty sure it will be, seeing these numbers, right? I think this is a massively correct step. Now let's take a look at the actual stances individually. We have all of the ones that we of course previously learned about, and we shall start with courtly. Courtly vassals believe in nobility and tradition and wish to preserve existing hierarchies. Social or compassionate vassals often adopt this stance. Social or compassionate vassals, because they are trying to build sort of this reputation, this personal impression. They want to gain it of you and the other way around, and what they like is the liege gives them court positions, creates new titles, or invites them to feasts. Basically something that spins the interpersonal connection and the story of glory of the realm. I like it. Courtly vassals dislike when their liege gives titles to low-born characters or disinherits non-disputed heirs. Non-disputed heirs? You know, now that I look at this... Wait a minute, let me actually search for this, because I'm pretty sure this is the only mention of disinherited non-disputed heirs. Do they? Oh, this must mean the trait where it's like disputed heritage, right? Oh man, it would have been so cool if there was a mechanic to dispute an heir, but I don't think so, okay? That is me just getting my hopes up, don't worry about it. They prefer social and compassionate heirs with a high diplomacy skill. So it's quite clear here, if you have a particular country, if you want to set yourself up, you can train your heir into this direction and you will have most of your realm support you if they are courtly. Very nice. Parochial. Parochial vassals want stability, decentralization and peace, and for the realm to stay out of outside affairs. Honorable or reserved vassals often adopt this stance. Parochial vassals like when their liege constructs or upgrades holdings, makes them guardians of close family, or uses the domestic affair council task. All of a sudden, a point to me sending a ward to a different person. All of a sudden, there's an immediate and very clear impact because it is communicated in this, rather than just he gains 10 opinion, I don't know. All of a sudden, it works in this fashion where it says they like it because obviously they are of this sort of opinion, right? Really nice. Parochial vassals dislike when their liege has high crown authority, declares non-trivial wars, so attacks someone with 80+% of the military strength, and they do prefer honorable and rational heirs with a high stewardship skill. So these are much more inward-oriented, that they're looking at a situation where they want a decentralized, a calm realm that, of course, is growing in prosperity and isn't concerned with the issues of levies and, of course, you know, everything related to crown authority. Then we got the Glory Hound. Glory Hound vassals care about standing and prestige and showing the world the strength of the realm they're part of. Bold or uncompassionate vassals often adopt this stance. Gloryhound vassals like when their liege has any partition succession law, achieves victory in offensive wars, and invites them to hunts. So this is, I would call it, the quintessential noble in a feudal realm. Okay, this is the archetype, the stereotype of, yes, of course I am a duke, and that is exactly, of course, the way they behave and the way you can sort of gain their trust. Gloryhound vassals dislike when their liege has high crown authority or signs defeat or white peace in wars. Finally, having an actual impact if you get a white piece. Finally. They prefer bold and brave heirs with high martial skill. Makes sense. Zealots. Zealot vassals are focused on matters of the faith and are swayed by pious actions. Zealous or vengeful vassals often adopt this stance, as do the clergy. Zealot vassals like when their liege constructs or upgrades temples, succeeds with a learned language scheme, has virtuous traits, goes on pilgrimages. Makes perfect sense so far. This is what always worries me about this, and I think Fate of Iberia sort of struggled with this. Fate of Iberia has a whole set of conditions that require you to adhere to them, or you will not get into the phase, or you will not be able to take this finishing action, you know, to actually end the struggle, and it is oftentimes too specific. I like the struggle, I like Fate of Iberia, but oftentimes I find myself doing an artificial move because I had to do it, otherwise the actual meter wouldn't have ticked. I'm sure that everybody has experienced this. It is very important when it comes to requirements, when it comes to reactions that the game has when you do something, that it's intuitive and that it makes sense. And I think when we take a look at this courtly, parochial, gloryhound, and zealot, it becomes very apparent that it is intuitive. Hey, what will zealots like if I build a church, if I go on a pilgrimage, if I'm virtuous? Obviously, right? These are things that they would very obviously enjoy. So I'm really happy to see that not only do we now have these specifications, we also have intuitive specifications. Super important, I really can't stress it enough. Zealot vassals dislike, ask the head of faith for gold, and has sinful traits. They prefer zealous and virtuous heirs with a high learning skill, obviously. Minority. Minority vassals feel that their faith or culture is marginalized by their liege. Vassals of hostile faiths or cultures with less than 30% acceptance often adopt this stance. So Franconian and Bohemian in this would basically just have under 30% acceptance. If you bring it up, you could theoretically make it so that, I wonder how frequently they roll for this, but you could make it so that Vratislav stops being a minority vassal. He could just say, hey, I'm accepted in this realm, it's totally cool, I'm a glory hound now, right? That would definitely work for him. Minority vassals like it when their liege uses the promote cultural acceptance task, obviously, as they will often change stance when above 30% cultural acceptance. There you got it, yeah. Minority vassals dislike when their liege converts the faith or culture of a county and has high crown authority. Even if you convert something that isn't the culture or faith of the minority vassal, they will be angry, because obviously that means that they might be next. So that does also make sense. If you have high crown authority, obviously they don't like it because the more centralized, the more they are at risk. They prefer honorable and compassionate heirs, preferably of another faith or culture than their current liege. Right. Oh man, elective monarchies. I just wondered. I think they might become much more interesting. Because previously, the elective logic was fairly flat. I hope they integrated this into the elective logic. That would be, I mean, they must have, right? Because the heir selection is basically that. Minor landowner vassals wish for freedom and low taxes. All baron tier rulers will adopt this stance. Minor landowner vassals like when their liege has low crown authority. Minor landowner vassals dislike when their liege revokes baronies, has high crown authority. Right. Does that matter? I don't know. So this is the only one. I'm almost inclined to say barons don't really need a vassal stance, because so you can revoke baronies, it doesn't do any tyranny modifier, so you can just do it whenever you want. Sure, other barons will dislike you more, but they're barons, they can't rebel. What are they gonna do, right? I don't really care for this one. I think the other ones here are fairly strong. The minor landowner doesn't seem like it would have too big of an impact. If you have an idea of where this could impact gameplay, then let me know, because I cannot come up with a single one. Anyway, let's move on from this. So vassal stances are incredibly diverse. They have fairly intuitive approaches of what you can do. Maybe sometimes when they like something or dislike something, it's too strong. It's a big question, because sure, you get 30 opinion for zealots if you build a single temple, but maybe if you, I don't know, ask the head of faith for gold, it's a minus 40. It really depends on the balancing there. I'm awfully curious on how this will actually work when it comes to the balancing, because this is where this system either thrives or starves itself, because, well, yeah, sure, you have this new system, but if it's unbalanced, if you do anything and everybody still loves you, then there's no change to where we are right now, right? There's also some nuance in how these stances are affected by various systems in the game. Crown authority, for example. Courtly vassals care less about high crown authority, but are also less pleased than other vassals with low crown authority. Glory hounds and courtly stances care a lot about court grandeur, and so on. It's very likely that we will add more things that the stances like or dislike in the future. I love this. It's not even mentioned here, actually, that court grandeur impacts them. It's not even mentioned that crown authority does it differently in the general requirements here, right? This means that my crown authority will impact parts of the realm in different fashions, which then leads to different faction behavior. Good change. Really good change. When landing a new vassal, there is a preview telling you which stance they'll take, adding an extra layer of consideration to your choices. Otbed is our court physician, or somebody's court physician at the very least. Resentful paragon, unmarried, and if we hand them this title, every courtly vassal, because he's lowborn, right, they do not like it. Otbed himself gets 40 opinion, and Otbed will become a zealot. There you have it. So it's very clearly communicated. In this particular feature here, they are doing some great UI work, without a doubt. The actual communication of information that is pertinent to you, incredibly important. But honestly, that's this entire dev diary. Their actual UI work here is very, very good in my opinion. And I think too much about UI, so I hope that you know that this means something. And here we have a particular explanation as well. Landing a lowborn character will upset courtly vassals based on amount of titles given. You can also see that they'll adopt the zealot stance. So if I give a duchy to a lowborn character, people generally will care less. If I give them a kingdom, they might care quite a bit. In addition, we have replaced almost all instances of vassal opinion with new stance opinions, which should make choices much more interesting. We have also replaced quite a few instances of other opinion types that more often than not were equivalent to general opinion. For example, a lot of the same faith opinion has been replaced with zealot vassal opinion. Big fan. In general, And this is ultimately, we're going to come to the end here of this. Let's just read this, and then I want to sort of talk about this section at the end. Many personality traits have been updated to have positive and negative vassal stance opinions as well, to make certain strong traits a bit weaker and some weak traits stronger within reason. You will also see opinion with vassal stances feature in new content. Right, patient, courtly vassal opinion goes up. Parochial vassal opinion goes up, and opinion of impatient characters obviously goes down. So they've changed this, rather than every vassal, it is now these particular 2 stances. I am very hopeful for this, and I think this system has a great future. I can, for example, picture these sort of stances leading to a general alignment when they join factions, when they join a potentially reworked system of factions, when they, how they approach you when it comes to tools, when it comes to tournaments, and so on and so forth. I like where the potential of this is, but I love where the sort of currently explained and existing framework is, because what this does now is hopefully, and again, this depends on the balancing, this should differentiate what we do in different areas of the realm. Okay, currently, if I do certain actions, my realm will simply love me. This is just a general truth, this will take place, and this is the way it is. Here we could have a much more layered approach to how we satisfy, how we pacify a realm, right? Because I might do some things and I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't need to make the other faction happy. Making this faction happy is enough, because they are powerful enough, and, well, now I don't really need to fight any vassals in rebellions. This is a nice sort of fragmentization of realm power and realm opinion. The huge thing that this definitely needs to pass is, how well is it balanced, right? If ultimately, sure, in the previous version you do something and everybody loves you for it, yeah, that kind of sucked, but if you do something here and everybody also loves you because, well, sure, it's only certain vassal stances, but it's very easy to game the stances, then it doesn't really change all that much. What it should do is make you do actions that you normally might not want to take. For example, just build a church. Hey, I don't really care about building churches in the realm, but I do if I have a lot of zealot vassals that matter for my rebellions, right? This is a massive boost that you can get there now, and I think the general direction here is definitely good, but I have this huge sort of rock of salt where I'm like, this needs to be balanced. But if it is, this is a massive step up, and again, as I said at the very start, I think not too comparable, in my opinion, to the Counselor stances in Crusader Kings II Conclave. There it was, again, much more limited. Anyway, let's move on to the next topic, Men-at-Arms Stationing, a big topic. Men-at-Arms, if you've played with them, you can very easily make them basically into spacemen that can annihilate anybody with their lasers, because you have just stacked modifiers so much. That whole thing has now been changed. Let's take a look. Another thing that we have wanted to solve for some time now is Men-at-Arms modifier stacking. Buildings used to give global bonuses to various MAA types, which would either be very underwhelming, the bonuses are quite low individually, or extremely overpowered. Building barracks everywhere and having nothing but heavy infantry Men-at-Arms would let you defeat anything and anyone. For this reason, we have introduced Men-at-Arms Stationing. So they went away from global modifiers to per Men-at-Arms per county stationing. Let's take a look. You can now station your Men-at-Arms regiments in domain holdings, which gives them bonuses. Each holding can have one stationed Men-at-Arms regiment, so you will have to choose wisely which regiments you station where. Stationing is entirely optional, and in case of conquest or inheritance, you will not lose your units. They will simply become unstationed. There are a lot of buildings that give bonuses, both generic and to specific types. This means that you might have a holding that is especially good at boosting pikemen or archers, for example. With time and effort, you will be able to specialize holdings to well and truly boost a specific type of Men-at-Arms, making your units the envy of the world. More on this later in the dev diary. So this right here is a building called Bloomeries, part of the Blacksmith series, and this holding, station Men-at-Arms damage plus 10%, holding taxes plus 4%, this county levy reinforcement rate, and then hold of this holding night effectiveness. Throughout the countryside, smoke rises from the Bloomery, simple structures with walls made of heat-resistant clay and stones, where a mix of charcoal and crushed iron ore is added from the open top to make sponge iron. You station a Men-at-Arm, for example, a heavy infantry Men-at-Arm, in a location that is particularly built up to suit them. This, I really need to stress this, is not what some might think, for example, oh, I station these Men-at-Arms, and it makes it so that there's some sort of roleplay behind it. They are the garrison in a role. That's not how it works. The word station here, as I understand it, particularly refers to the idea that the bonuses of this county apply to this particular set of Men-at-Arms. which still is a massive change, but just to separate these two. So this change makes it so that there is no global change. Technically, yes, you can build every single county to support just heavy infantry, and then you just run around with heavy infantry, but realistically speaking, your individual sort of top of how strong can this man-at-arm be is lower than it previously was. Because again, it's no longer global, it is just in particular the local station regiment. To station a unit, you go to them in the military interface. You will find a station button. There's also a new current situation item that takes you there, along with a new tutorial explaining in detail how to station them. Right, so not station any holding, you station them, currently they have the base values, then you station them, and they get these bonuses right here. You can see in Leuchtenberg, this is blue, they already have an actual man-at-arm there, and in Leuchtenberg, the bonuses given to heavy infantry are less than if you stationed them in Parsberg. This is significantly better, right? So you station them, they get a bonus, and this is now the new meta. There is no more infinite global sort of focusing down on just one man-at-arm. Instead, you would go into a direction where you say this county supports X and Y, this county supports Z and A, right? These changes are generally better. I think the doom stacking, I think this is much more suitable for AI, right? The doom stacking that a player can do that the AI doesn't fully understand. At least taming that, I don't think you can ever fully remove it, and I don't think that balancing should be the primary concern, you know, all throughout the entire development process of Crusader Kings 3, because this is fundamentally a roleplay game, but this is nonetheless a good step. After you've stationed a unit, you can see where they are stationed in their card, along with the bonuses and a breakdown of sources. You can restation a unit at any time, except when it is raised, you are at war, or the holding is besieged or occupied. Right, there you can see the bonuses that we just took a look at earlier. Realm Capital gives a general bonus, then the Mod building, so that is the castle, and then Bloomeries. Okay, so this is where these modifiers are coming from. I think we can see it actually here. These are gates. The Mod must be the general thing, right? The actual holding type. Right. You can also see from the province interface whether a unit is stationed there, along with a handy button to go to them should the holding be yours. Right, so here we can see the pikemen. I like that this is quite local right there, and then this button lets you go to the actual regiment that is stationed there. These changes are good. I think they are overall very welcome, but I think they really get good once we combine them with the next segment. So let's take a look at that. Domain limit rebalance and building slot revamp. After the big economical AI update that came in the Friends and Foes update, one point of feedback that came up frequently was that it felt like rulers had too few vassals left. This is obviously an issue in a game about personal relationships. We don't want to limit the AI in arbitrary ways, so we took a look at the game, and one of the things we found was that domain limits on average were very high, even for mediocre rulers. Yes. Most of the problematic domain limits we found to be coming from innovations, which gave a total of 4 domain limits over the course of the game. Stacking stewardship was also a bit too good compared to any other skill. Because of this, we have removed 2 instances of domain limit increase from innovations. You now get +1 domain limit in the tribal era and +1 in late medieval instead of a total of 4, so +1, +1, +1, +1. And we have increased how many points of stewardship you need for +1 domain. Limit to 6 from 5. But, and here you see the bailiffs, instead of now focusing on more counties, which super centralizes your realm because it gives you more levies as well. It makes it so that you can stack infinite global modifiers, which is gone now. This is why I'm saying together this is huge, right? Because now you have a limited amount of domain in general, which means you might, even if you have more men-at-arms than you have domain, make a choice whether you leave this regiment or that regiment unstationed. If you unlock bailiffs now, first of all, Gloryhound vassals are more common. I love that. Oh my god. An actual transition between how people behave, right? Maybe towards the end game, more and more people will be courtly, making it so that you have a reason to invest in the grandeur of your royal court, because they're all courtly and they love it if you have high grandeur, rather than, you know, it's just a Gloryhound and they want you to go to war. This also now gives you an additional building slot, and this building slot is ever more important because, well, you have fewer domain holdings and building slots are much more severely limited. We know that a lot of players enjoy the gardening aspect of having a large domain, and we didn't want to just lower the domain limit and make the game less fun for those players. Instead, we have opted for a different solution, where each holding grows in power and gardening potential with time as innovations are unlocked. As an added benefit, this makes the building/economical game feel different between the early and late eras. This castle holding has 2 building slots. If you unlock more, it will get more building slots. This changes the game so insanely, but also actually limits the pacing. So, for example, there's this classic strategy where, for example, take Shelland, which all of its holdings are actually facing towards the sea, which means you can build guilds, you can build ports and all that stuff, and then you can max out development in Shelland very early on, and if you have a very small culture, that culture can be just in Shelland, and you can basically push yourself up to the top. That changes now, because at most you can build 2 things there, until you get the adequate actual innovation. The changes in pacing there are definitely something that I hope will slow down the general power creep quite a bit. I said this before, I think what I'm missing here is a rework to how legacies impact whether people like you, what your domain limit is, how you feel about things, because I think legacies are insanely overpowered right now. It's ludicrous just how strong they are, but these holdings, they slow you down. The innovations generally have been made much less powerful, making it so that your curve, your power curve, is much more gradual in general. There are fewer significant, massive jumps in there, and this means that every building you pick is now a much more dramatic, much more important choice, because you can't just be, oh yeah, I'll just build this right now, and then the other 3 open slots, I just put X, Y, or Z in there. What matters now is building up potentially even your actual main domain holding. Since you have a smaller domain, you might want to focus more on castles in your particular county, which then further would strengthen the actual regiments stationed there, since there are no global modifiers there, there are local modifiers. Anyway, what I'm saying is, the choices that you now need to make are much more impactful, because the general sort of free space that you have is smaller. You need to be more specific about what you do and why you do it. This isn't comparable with a, for example, an actual econ rework, that sort of thing, but this definitely makes building more interesting. I don't think about building. First of all, I don't think. But second of all, I don't think about building, when it comes to actually making choices, because the choices are so boring. They're so straightforward. You will see this later as well. They made buildings much more interesting because their effects are much more varied, and they made it harder to choose because you have just fewer slots. The changes made here in combination with the general change where you have fewer domain holdings, and where you then do not have global modifiers for your men-at-arms, making it so that every holding, every county might be different, because again, you're looking at a situation where that men-at-arm relies on that particular boost, right? Makes it much more interesting. I'm really looking forward to this. I think this is a great change. For those of you who still want to have a higher lower domain limit, we have added a game rule where you can modify all rulers in the world by +3, +2, +1, -1, -2, -3 domain limit should you desire. I'm never going to use this, whatever. Holdings currently have 3 to 4 building slots in the live version of the game. We've lowered the base limit by -2, which means that without any innovations, a primary holding has 2 building slots and a secondary holding 1. Innovations can increase this limit by +4, making the maximum amount of buildings in the same holding 6, 2 more than the previous maximum. Talk about buffing building tall while also curtailing the biggest access choices the player could make. Big fan, seriously. A late game holding with 6 building slots, a duchy building slot, and a special building slot. Quite spectacular. This is indeed Paris. These changes should, while keeping domains a tad smaller than before, increase the potential for gardening, as now you can improve and specialize your holdings over time. Instead of locking in your building choices within the first few years of each game, that's exactly how it is right now, you will now make choices throughout the entire duration. And there are even buildings that don't unlock until later eras, meaning you might switch out buildings later, which is something that you would never do unless you just conquered a holding and you needed to undo something that the AI did fairly poorly. Building slots are kept on a per culture basis, but a holding can never lose any building slots that they have gained should the culture change. Perfectly sensible in my opinion. Of course, just increasing the number of building slots isn't very fun if there's nothing interesting to build, which leads us to new buildings and building balance. Firstly, we took a look at buildings from a holistic perspective. While it's fun to build, you easily hit a point where it becomes trivial to build whatever you want because of how much gold income you have. For this reason, we have revamped the cost progression of all buildings. There's still buildings that are cheap, expensive, and so on, but overall costs will go up significantly in the mid to late game. What it might look like an individual economic building might not repay their cost on paper, the truth is that there are so many sources of compounding income in the game, from development, lifestyles, traits, and other buildings adding on a tax percentage multiplier, that they always do, especially with smart planning. Costs at the start of the game, the first 2 building levels, are still static, so the early build-up phase isn't disturbed too much, but later on, the curve will start going up markedly, making your choices more meaningful and adding additional layers of risk to managing your gold. This right here is Farms and Fields number 1. 150, who cares, right? Reduced cost for feast activities hosted in this holding. This is what I meant earlier as well. They made buildings more interesting by limiting the slots that you have, across multiple counties since your domain will be smaller. And these sort of varied effects give you more consideration than we previously had, where it's like more money, more levies, more minute-arm slots, whatever. I don't even think that was a thing, but you know where I'm coming from there, right? This is a good change. This right here is level 5, and 3 years, $750, so significantly more expensive. And you can see this holding, not sure how massive this change is. This county supply limit, holding taxes, and development growth. This actually is a great change. Yeah, wow. Oh, they spaced it out. Isn't farms and fields? Oh no, actually this may have always been in the later category, that it then starts giving you development growth. I thought it did this on level 1 as well. You let me know. But anyway, the point here is the choices are much more impactful, and since they're more expensive towards the end, you will definitely have some different considerations as you go through the game. Secondly, we have revamped a lot of buildings, especially military buildings, to be more interesting and worthwhile to build. We want there to be a reason to deliberate your choice of buildings and not always go for the best economic buildings in every holding you own. Military buildings now make use of the new minute-arm stationing bonuses. They have effects on travel danger and almost always have secondary and tertiary bonuses unlocked for later building levels. We've also removed several sources of levy percentage boosts, such as from skill and council jobs, to make levies from buildings more important. And as overall minute-arms damage is going to be much higher, levy reinforcement rate is also going to be more important than before. There are way too many changes to go over, so here are 2 examples. Barracks, aren't these 3 examples? Oh no, okay, this is all barracks. Barracks, danger, -1. Then stationed heavy infantry and spearmen, plus some levies. Also, reduced cost for grand tournament activities. Nice. Okay, if you want to host a lot of grand tournament activities, right, in this particular holding, then barracks are definitely a good choice. Then, down here, tier 3. Danger -3, station heavy infantry, right, they get different and more important bonuses because now they also get toughness, but they also get a massive boost to heavy infantry, and you also get a few more levies. And then down here, danger -5, this bonus goes largely towards damage rather than toughness, because this maxes out, or at least it reaches here plus 100%, whereas infantry toughness, since it only starts in level 3, reaches only plus 60%, levies plus 400, and this county, levy size plus 1%, garrison size plus 1%, and levy reinforcement rate plus 15%. This reminds me a lot of how in CK2 it was much more pronounced, the difference between early game tribals and mid game tribals, where tribals just completely fell off because your light infantry would become complete garbage. You cannot access this if you're a tribal. This is basically CK3 strengthening the need to transition towards feudalism or, you know, the other government form. Right here, militia camps, right? Danger -1, then you have archers and skirmishers impacted by this. Over here you have the same effects basically as this, except the toughness actually is smaller. Interesting. Interesting indeed that the toughness benefit that we get from this is significantly smaller than from the actual heavy infantrymen and spearmen modifiers there. Then right here, and also actually this impacts pursuit, right? Pursuit and screen is impacted right here. And then on here we have the finishing of this, similar to what we had going on there, except supply limit plus 400 and control growth plus 10% and minute arms maintenance -4%. -4%, is that good? That doesn't feel that good. -4%. Oh, it's all minute arms. I thought it was the minute arms stationed in this holding, but that's not the case. It's all minute arms. Okay, fair enough. -4% in general, that's pretty good. So now we have these choices that we can make. Depending on how we build our army, depending on how our neighbors build our army, we will now build up our counties into a very particular direction. And again, you will definitely outpace, I think, tribals with this. We've also made an effort to normalize the different buildings so that going for heavy infantry buildings / bonuses isn't a no-brainer option. All the economic / fortification buildings are mostly the same, with some notable exceptions / changes. I cannot talk anymore. All fortification buildings now give travel danger reduction and some minute-arms bonuses depending on their type, and most combat-oriented bonuses have been replaced on economic buildings. Very nice. I'm a really big fan. They reworked all of this stuff. You can see right here as well, increases hunt sighting chances and hunt success chance for hunt activities hosted in this holding. Hunt sighting chances. Can you believe that? We're gonna get particular bonuses to hunts in particular locations. Huh. I love this. I gotta be honest with you. I build buildings in the current CK3 version in a very utilitarian fashion. Why wouldn't you? There's no other consideration there. There's just no other consideration there. Here, I'm like, I don't know. If I want to use this activity a lot, why wouldn't I build this? This is cool. This is really neat. Right here you can see as well tax, then raid time, defend advantage, and levies. And over here, what do we have over here? You can actually see this fully. Nice. Okay. Tax, fort level, danger, stationed, heavy cavalry damage, toughness, and garrison. So, yeah, the modifiers here all clearly changed. And I think the considerations that go into this are now much more interesting. Practically all duchy buildings have been updated to account for the new modifiers, providing a further specialized boost to men-at-arms should you choose a line such as jousting grounds. Many of them also tie in with various activities and with travels, as we have seen previously. These crown smithies right here, increased quality of sponsored inspirations, enables the superior armaments travel option, reduced cost for grand tournament activities hosted in the holding. So if we combine this with what we saw previously here, where, yeah, indeed, the barracks make it cheaper, then the crown smithies make it cheaper. And the crown smithies, I mean, this is an amazing... I love a higher level of quality from sponsored inspirations. But you can combine these to make this a super tournament holding. And then on top of that, get some stationed infantry or spearmen damage. And I think they actually go hand in hand, right? Yeah. This is heavy infantry, this is spearmen. So everything so far from what we've seen that impacts grand tournaments also impacts heavy infantry or spearmen. Which means you can focus... without regretting that you've focused on this, because now this county all of a sudden is much more interesting, both from a civil, sort of, I want to hold grand tournaments angle, and from a military, I'm going to station a men-at-arms here. Really good changes. I gotta tell you, like, building is the most boring part of CK3. These are great changes. As there are now many more building slots to fill, we want there to be plenty to choose from. We have added 10 new building lines, some generally available and some in specific terrains, that allow you to specialize your holdings to your heart's content. Here we'll present a random building level for each, along with a short explanation of their uses. First up, the generally available ones. The stable line of buildings replace the hunting grounds in boosting light and heavy cavalry. So hunting grounds, we saw that above, they do other stuff now, other stuff that is really cool, right? The hunting site and that sort of thing. But these now actually do what the hunting grounds used to do in terms of the army benefits, right? They also have an added tactical benefit of making your army slightly faster, allowing you to more easily counter an enemy army in terrain favorable to you. In addition to this, stables make your travels faster and also unlock the superior mounts travel option at buildings level 4+. Right, the superior mounts travel option that I believe speeds you up, right? This holding stationed light cavalry damage, right? We got light cavalry, we got heavy cavalry, again, it takes this over now. And then hold over this building, army movement speed and travel speed go up. Yeah, this is actually, wow. The movement speed here is really good. It's funny, it is funny, I will say this. It is funny that you could have an army entirely of heavy infantry, but they now move faster. But realistically speaking, I'm just going to say it, if you have this bonus, if you build stables, right, you're probably going to be using cavalry. So it sort of goes hand in hand there as well. Blacksmiths are the jack of all trades men-at-arms boosting building, being one of very few building lines that boost any unit type stationed in the holding. Blacksmiths are also an economy compounding line, granting a tax percentage boost to the holding. This line also focuses on levy reinforcement rate, which is mentioned before is more important now. Since we have higher killing rates now in general, we need more levy reinforcement, otherwise we will be bare after any given war and any given siege. Makes perfect sense. At building level 5+, blacksmiths also boost artifact quality, which is extra relevant now as we've replaced the limitation on the commission artifact decision to only produce common items with a flat -20 quality decrease. Oh! And this is actually great news for people that don't own Royal Court. Because they, if I remember this correctly, have access to commission artifact, which now is actually more useful. Alright, so you build blacksmiths, and then even without the DLC, boom, you get amazing artifacts. Blacksmiths can help offset this. To avoid confusion, the duchy building line has been renamed Crown Smithies, right, that makes sense. General stationed men-at-arms bonus right there, increased quality of sponsored inspirations, levy reinforcement, and that is quite drastic, and then holder of this holding knight effectiveness plus 5%. Depending on where in the world you are. The regional hardy warriors were famed for either having stalwart infantry, for example Scotland, Tibet, southern India, or merciless cavalry, example Spain, Anatolia, or the steppe. Hilly and mountainous terrain now allow you to construct one of two building lines depending on the geographical location, to represent the fact that warriors from there are exceptionally hardy. Tribal rulers can also construct these lines, so this is actually accessible for tribal rulers, fair enough. Hillside grazing lands are a military economy hybrid building that boosts all kinds of cavalry, making it perfect to combine with the stables or cavalry line of buildings, and the horse herds one if located in the steppes. You can also use this to improve the economy of an otherwise rather poor terrain type. Right, yeah, look at that. It boosts all of these, gives you more taxes, and gives you more levies. Warrior lodges are a pure military building line, giving a lot of levies and bonuses to all kinds of infantry. Combining this line with blacksmiths and other barracks, either barracks or military camps, can make for fearsome soldiers, especially since stationing regiments here will give them the pursuit statistic if they didn't already have it. Right, yeah, look at that. Man, these considerations will be so much merch. I know, you know, at this point, It's sort of repeating without a doubt, but just think about the choices that you make currently in CK3 with buildings. When it comes to this, different from the Vassal Stances, which I think are great, but with this, I don't even care whether it's balanced. The fact that I am now looking at this and am considering many more angles is already enough. Obviously, the more balanced, the better. But my god, is building boring currently. And my god, will this make it not boring. The next building line is regional in nature, limited to India for cultures with a wood steel innovation and only in coastal riverside holdings at that. Representing a fantastic technique of forging, the wind furnaces are incredibly powerful. Not only is it a military economy hybrid line, but it boosts any type of minute-arm stationed there with the highest possible building bonus that we are willing to hand out. The rarity of this building line makes holdings that can construct them well worth fighting over. Oh, and they also boost artifact quality of weapon and armor inspirations. Right, yeah, look at that. Increased quality, then you get taxes, station minute-arms damage and toughness go up at level 5 to plus 100%, and holder of the holding as well, knight effectiveness. And look at the prices, yeah, the prices are quite something, which is good. Desperately needed for sure. For the steppe, there is a unique building line that, you guessed it, boosts cavalry. It is possible to combine this building with others, making steppe rulers truly fearsome. With enough of these built, steppe armies will ride and raid along the steppe at blazing speeds. Tribal rulers can also construct this line. This is the highest level, which admittedly, you won't be getting anytime soon. Plus 16%. Oh my god, for a total of plus 32% if you're raiding. 32%. Somebody has taken a look at that infamous Magyar raiding map on Wikipedia. That's all I can say. Next up, we have 4 late game buildings, so these will only come in fairly late, and with that I think can be seen as definitely not tribal. These are unlocked by innovations in the high medieval era, it's literally impossible, which allows us to make them stand out and be more powerful than a building that you can construct in 867. These buildings allow you to massively specialize your provinces or unlock new ways to utilize your minute-arms. They're well worth saving a slot or 2 for. Firstly, we have the workshop's building line, unlocked by the advanced bowmaking innovation. You can see right here, taxes go up, station minute-arms siege progress goes up, that is massive. This is only level 4. You get a station siege weapon effectiveness of plus 160%. You are kidding. Archer maintenance and skirmisher maintenance yet again goes down. They have a lot of individual sort of minute-arms modifier maintenance modifiers here, don't they? The following 3 buildings lines are very powerful because of their compounding effect on the local economy. They all have different criteria for being built based on geographical region and terrain. There are a few holdings in the world that can build 2 or even 3 of these. Keep an eye out for those, as they have the potential of being incredibly good. Right, Dumyat, for example, allows all 3 of these. Yep, wow. That's incredible. And these are windmills, right? Windmills, of course, comes with the windmill innovation, taxes, supply limit, holding taxes plus 6%, and then development growth goes up. This is, of course, big. If you want development growth, this is the choice right here. Then we have watermills, also comes with the windmill innovation. You can build these commonly in hills, mountains, forests, or next to rivers. Taxes, supply limit, building construction, and holding construction. I like that, especially with these new changes to the buildings. Yeah, this seems like a really great modifier right here. Holding taxes, development growth, and development growth, of course, goes up as well. Big fan of these. And then the Caravanserai, I guess, while the weakest at boosting development, have a whole host of interesting effects. They are unlocked by the guild's innovation, reducing the cost of mercenaries and minute-arms alongside bonus to artifact quality and defensibility. They fill a different niche while still being extremely strong economically. They are commonly built in deserts or drylands. Now you look me in the eye and tell me honestly, and I've stated this before time and time again, I do not like to talk about the content we see here from a perspective of, oh, in the future, this is gonna be so cool. This stuff is cool now, and that is what I care for. If this sucked now, but was great framework, I wouldn't be happy. But you tell me right now that Caravanserai, whatever it's pronounced, isn't designed to later on be used as a starting and end point for caravans. Come on, okay? Like, come on, okay? And if you build ports, no way that this long-term isn't gonna have an impact there either. This rework, come on, okay? I'm just saying. Anyway, let's talk about this. Merchant halls, what do they do? Increased quality of sponsored inspirations. This holding, tax plus 2 per month. Then hostile raid time goes up. Defend advantage plus 8. Obviously, you know, they sort of protect themselves here. This county, development growth, and danger goes down. And then holder of this holding, minute-arms maintenance goes down, and mercenary hire cost goes down as well. Pairing this with Andalusian culture, which is massive to bring down the cost of mercenaries, Man, I like the idea of this for sure. They fill a different niche while still being extremely strong economically. They're commonly built in deserts or drylands, right? Finally, here's an example of what you can achieve in the late game if you tailor your economy well. This regiment of heavy cavalry costs 3.4k gold to recruit, and these are their stats after spending roughly 20k gold on buildings in their stationed holdings. Hardly a trivial amount, and one that took a lot of careful planning to achieve. Huh. Wow. 400 plus 410 plus 133 and plus 8. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. As you can see, you can still massively stack, but you do it in a localized, different fashion now. If you like modifiers, if you like numbers, this is it for you. If you like to build buildings past their numbers for roleplaying, this is it for you. This is a really solid change, and quite frankly, I don't even care whether it's balanced because the status quo isn't balanced at all, but more importantly, I think this finally rips out a boring part of the game and puts in something that I actually will think about before I make a decision. We hope that these updated and new buildings will breathe some fresh life into the management part of the game, and we look forward to seeing just how you will specialize your holdings. Really looking forward to this. Let's move on to improved personality tooltip. I don't think there's too much that we need to talk about. We already cut into this earlier. Look at this. Character personality. So first of all, this is a dishonorable planner. Duke Otto of Meissen. Character personality, dishonorable planner. Economical archetype, cautious. Vassal stance, parochial. He will act towards you and others according to his personality. Right. And then right here, evil blackguard, which isn't him but is somebody else, is explained in greater detail. If I hover over this, it will explain it. This character is very dishonorable and is significantly more likely to start hostile schemes, abuse their position as regents, send blackmail, use the fine secret counselor task, and betray their friends and spouses. They're much less likely to follow through on commitments and can stoop incredibly low to further their goals. This character is very cruel and is significantly more likely to harm others, use hostile schemes such as murder, punish prisoners with execution and torture, and join as agents. They do not care about the suffering of others. This breakdown is goated. I love this so much. It's going to be so useful for roleplay, I swear. Then right here, Fearless Paragon, another personality. This character is very honorable and very bold indeed. So basically you get, primary and a secondary element to each of these personalities, right? Compassionate thinker, somewhat rational and somewhat compassionate. You can see they all have different impacts. Let's just skip over that though. You can see it here very, very clearly. The other thing, of course, are the economic decision-making processes of the AI. Being cautious, what does it mean? A cautious ruler wants to be prepared for war to be declared upon them. They are somewhat averse to declaring offensive wars, instead preferring a slow build-up. They keep a buffer of gold to help defend themselves and invest into buildings and men-at-arms to help them feel safe. Reserved and careful characters tend to be cautious. Common traits include patient, calm, craven, paranoid, and content. They will never be fickle. This now doesn't only explain what you can expect from them in terms of schemes, actions, and so on. It also explains how they will be investing. It might explain if it will be worth, 3 years from now, kidnapping somebody they like to sell back to them, because you will know if they're cautious, they're not going to be spending their money on much. This is really good stuff. It's so small, but it will be so perfect. And ultimately, it's not even small, but man, this is a great, great shift. Rich presence, this is truly a small change that is nice. Really cool, okay, nothing wrong with it. Generally, we made the flavor text prioritize temporary ongoing actions first before falling back to interesting things about your character and realm before going on to describe the more mundane. So this is basically the rich presence feature on Steam, where you just see what your people are doing, right? Crusader Kings III beta, defending against their enemies as Vasilevs Konstantinos X of the Byzantine Empire. Then scheming against Kaiserin Bertha as Kaiser Heinrich IV, because you currently are scheming, right? On a pilgrimage to Santiago as King Alfonso VI, and then governing as regent of the Kingdom of France. So these can be highly specific, these can be super general. They do say that if you play multiplayer, it won't be exposed, okay? So don't worry about that. Nobody can see, oh, he's trying to kill me. Either way, this is a good change, nothing wrong with it. Let's continue. Alright, and then here we have destroying artifacts and Aniconism. A much requested feature will make it into the next update. If you are fighting and winning in a lot of tournaments, you will inevitably end up with a pile of prizes and no room to show them. Or you might be in a lot of wars looting artifacts from sieges that you will never use. Sometimes it would be nice to simply break down an artifact for its monetary value, and now you can do so with the Destroy Artifact button. Right, the Psalter of Cuckoldry. Interesting. Will be destroyed right here. You will get $40, so you get half of the money that it would be worth, any ruler can destroy common and masterwork artifacts as they create a lot of clutter. When doing so, you will get an amount of gold that is a little bit less than half of what it would cost to commission such an artifact in the first place. However, to destroy famed and illustrious artifacts, you have to follow a faith with the Aniconism tenet. Anachronists, like Carmatians, which didn't have this tenet before, and iconoclasts gain piety when destroying artifacts, and an especially strong boost to piety if they destroy religious relics of any faith. This puts an interesting and immersive spin on an otherwise quite uninteresting tenet. Yes, hugely positive change. Thank God. Look at this. This guy's Carmatian, I assume, gains 1000 piety from destroying the former bells of Santiago. I love it. Carmatianism now has Aniconism. Rulers of this faith must spend piety to reforge or repair artifacts, and rulers of this faith can destroy artifacts for piety. Big fan. Then right here, current situation improvements. I don't think we have to go too much over the details, but let's just take the general thing in. A tool that everyone uses, both new players and veterans. That's true for CK3. I think current situation is a hugely important tool for CK3. For Victoria 3, it didn't really work out that much, but for CK3, it's amazing. It is the current situation widget, a handy collection of information, both pressing and not, that helps you decide what to do. Until now, this interface has not been as informative as it could be, with entries lacking information and visual recognizability being quite low. We've made an effort to remedy that and make each and every entry as visually distinct and informative at a glance as possible. You're not employing a physician, has its own icon. Your realm will lose land if Count Dietrich II of Hildesheim dies. You can station regiments, you could declare wars, your son can marry. Look at all these illustrations, look at all these specifications. You can potentially negotiate an alliance with your nephew, Duke Dirk V. 938 troops and not inside your realm, which means it's an alliance that isn't just a non-aggression pact, it's actually an alliance. You can call them in. You're fourth in line to inherit the county of Stade, not inside your realm. So this is, oh, look at that, we might be getting this, and it's not inside of my realm, meaning it would actually add something, rather it's just a new vassal. These are good changes. Nothing wrong with this, right? I think you're looking at this and you're saying, yeah, this is all good. Potential wars will now show whether or not the potential target is much weaker, green, roughly the same strength, grey, or much stronger. Good stuff. I think this is just much easier decision-making process. You look at this, you immediately know, oh yeah, I can just eat these guys. This could be dangerous. This is dangerous. And this is an equal fight. Very good. Good changes. Nothing wrong with it. Alliances have been expanded to include everyone that you can form an alliance with. Previously, it only showed close family, and it's been split in two. Those who would accept and those who can be convinced. You can potentially negotiate an alliance, right? This is if they must be convinced, and this is the general. You can negotiate and they will just say yes. Here you can see that the opinion of the realm priest is shown directly in the entry. There's also a new situation for when the Pope would grant you a claim on a relevant duchy plus title, neighboring duchy, or any kingdom. Really good. I like that one in particular. Sometimes I would just like manually check and would be very annoyed by it, but now here you can see it. There you go. These are all great changes. Now, in fact, there are so many changes to the current situation list that it'll be easier to show the update notes in full. We're going to skip over most of these. Again, as I said, great changes, but it's better to just experience this. None of this here is necessary to know. Excluded parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents from the family can marry current situation, as marrying away your widowed mother isn't something we want to motivate the player to do. Yeah. Expanded the child needs guardian current situation to include valid grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Thank you. Oh my god. I would forget about my grandchildren so often. The demand payment current situation now states how much gold they have. Thank you. The inline of succession for title current situation, right, shows whether it's outside of the realm. The not endorsed by realm priest current situation now opens the sway interactions, as that's what you want 99% of the times you click it. Exactly. The prisoner can be ransomed current situation now shows if they have enough gold to pay their ransom directly in the entry. Thank God. All of these current situation changes are good, but to summarize what really matters, the building rework, the rework to holdings, the rework to tech, the building to vassal stances, to vassal opinions, to all of these opinion changes, this is all excellent stuff. The mechanical framework has been enhanced significantly, and I'm really looking forward to playing that. I gotta be honest with you, I think all of these changes are insanely solid. I have the caveat, and I want to repeat this, I have the caveat, especially the vassal opinions, since nothing seems to have been changed about Splendor, or maybe it has been changed, they just didn't say it here. I'm like, let's see whether it's balanced. For the buildings, I have absolutely no objections. That stuff could be as broken as possible, and I would still have fun finally actually thinking about what I want to build, rather than follow extremely flat building schemes. What we have right here is a godsend. These changes are excellent, they are in the free patch, they will just enhance the game the way it is. I pray for the late game creep to be less bad. Again, especially Splendor, if anybody's listening, right? I hate that stuff. But this stuff is huge. These changes are great Thank God that this is in. And that's today's dev diary. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your concerns, what your hopes, what your general thoughts are. And again, next week after the next dev diary, there will be a general summary dev diary, or rather a general summary video if you haven't caught up with anything. Next week, in the actual dev diary, we will delve into the activity system and take a look at some of the reworked activities in detail. I hope we're going to be looking at hunts, because I want to see that hunting sighting. I want to see that explained without a doubt. I'm really interested in all of this. And I'm so excited that we're finally getting CK3 stuff, and it's really good stuff. Thank God. Alright, with that being said, I will see you later, alligator.